Humanity had always looked to the stars with hope, dreaming of what lay beyond their small planet. The idea of meeting alien civilizations had been the subject of countless stories, both hopeful and fearful. But no one was prepared for the day that the alien ship arrived. It was an ordinary day when the message came. The world had been quiet for months, and the people of Earth had almost forgotten about the stars. But then, out of nowhere, a strange transmission was picked up by Earth's deep space observatories. The message was garbled at first, filled with static and strange symbols. Scientists and military officials rushed to decode it. The transmission came from a distant part of the galaxy, from a place no one had ever heard of. Soon it became clear. A ship was on its way, headed straight for Earth. The ship was unlike anything humanity had ever seen before. It was enormous, its shape almost organic, twisting and shifting in ways that made it seem alive. It traveled faster than anything human technology could achieve, cutting through space like a blade. The world held its breath as the ship approached. News of the alien arrival spread quickly across the planet. Governments around the world declared states of emergency. Panic and curiosity swept through the streets, and every eye turned to the skies. For days, the media covered the alien arrival non-stop, speculating about the intentions of the ship and its passengers. The moment the ship entered Earth's atmosphere, things took a turn for the worse. The craft was damaged, its hull fractured, by the harsh entry into the atmosphere. It crashed in a remote area, deep in the wilderness, far from the nearest cities. The world's governments scrambled to respond. Military units were mobilized immediately, and a rescue team was formed to locate and secure the wreckage. The team that was sent was made up of elite soldiers, scientists, and engineers. They traveled for days, cutting through dense forests and across rugged terrain to reach the crash site. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone was nervous about what they might find. Was this a peaceful visitation, or a threat to humanity's existence? When they finally reached the crash site, they were shocked by what they saw. The ship had crashed violently into the ground, leaving a large crater in its wake. Smoke rose from the wreckage, and parts of the ship were still on fire. But what shocked the team the most was the figure lying among the debris. She was beautiful, in a way that no human could ever be. Her skin shimmered with a faint, otherworldly glow, her features sharp and regal. The soldiers had been expecting to find something alien, but they had never imagined anything like this. The figure was an alien queen, no doubt about it. She lay motionless, her body battered and broken from the crash, her eyes closed as though, in a deep sleep. The soldiers quickly moved to secure the area. They were hesitant, unsure of what to do next. This was an alien queen, an unknown entity from a faraway world. She was powerful, dangerous, and possibly beyond their understanding. But as the team approached her, they noticed something strange. She was trembling. Despite her regal appearance and the power that must have once radiated from her, the queen was vulnerable. The trembling was subtle at first, a slight shiver as the cold of the alien ship's remains seeped into her skin. But the closer the soldiers got, the more they could see her body quivering in fear. "She's alive," one of the soldiers whispered. As the team rushed to her side, the team carefully lifted the alien queen from the wreckage. They had no idea what to expect, but they knew they had to get her to safety.
Oh.
They wrapped her in a special containment suit to protect her fragile body. From the harsh environment, she was still trembling, her eyes wide open now, scanning her surroundings in confusion and fear as the team moved her back toward the military convoy. They couldn't help but notice the look of terror in her eyes. It wasn't fear of the soldiers or the situation, it was something deeper. It was as if she was afraid of something else entirely. She gazed around in panic, her eyes darting to each human she encountered, and then to the food rations the soldiers carried. The team exchanged uneasy glances. There was something unsettling about the queen's reaction. She didn't seem afraid of death or the wreckage of her ship. No, she was afraid of something more primal. And then it became clear to Marcus, one of the soldiers on the team. The queen was afraid of human hunger. It was a fear that Marcus had never considered. He had heard stories of alien species, of the terrifying possibilities that came with intergalactic encounters. He had heard whispers about human hunger, but he had never truly understood it. Now, seeing the Queen's fear, he began to grasp the ancient rumors that had floated around. Human hunger wasn't just for food, it was something more. As they transported the Queen to the military base for medical treatment, Marcus stayed by her side. He tried to communicate with her, though her language was incomprehensible. The Queen's trembling never stopped. Her fear of the humans around her seemed to grow with every passing moment. She was not afraid of their weapons or their power, she was afraid of what they might do to her. But the question remained, what was it about human hunger that terrified her so much? What had happened in the galaxy that made her so scared of being consumed by humanity? Marcus could only wonder. But one thing was certain, this alien queen was not just a leader of a distant species. She was a frightened being caught in the middle of something far bigger than anyone could understand. As they prepared to enter the base, Marcus made a silent vow. He would uncover the Queen's fear and protect her from whatever it was that haunted her. The military base was buzzing with activity. Soldiers moved quickly, setting up perimeter defenses, checking equipment, and preparing for whatever might come next. But for Marcus, everything seemed to slow down once the alien queen was safely inside the medical facility. He had seen her fear, felt it in the way her body trembled when they tried to feed her, and it bothered him. He couldn't shake the image of her wide eyes, filled with panic as she turned away from every meal offered to her. Her trembling had not stopped. And it wasn't just from the cold. It wasn't from the crash either. There was something deeper, something primal in her fear, and Marcus could see it in her eyes every time a human approached. The fear was as real as any enemy he had faced in battle. But this was a fear of something he couldn't even begin to understand. The doctors and soldiers had carefully placed her on a medical bed, trying to treat the cuts and bruises from the crash. But the Queen hardly responded to them. She kept her eyes locked on Marcus, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and dread. She wasn't afraid of his weapon or his uniform. She was afraid of something else. But what was it? What could a powerful queen, a leader of her species, fear so much? Marcus couldn't help but wonder. He had seen soldiers afraid before fear. Of death, fear of battle, fear of the unknown. But this was different. It was more than just fear. It was terror. One evening, when the sun was setting and the base was quieter, Marcus was asked to take a shift with the Queen. He had become her assigned human contact, and the base needed someone to keep her calm. He agreed without hesitation, knowing he had to learn more about what made her so afraid. As he entered the small room where she had been placed, Marcus noticed how still she was. The Queen lay on the bed, her eyes closed, but he could still see the faint tremors running through her body. She had not spoken a word since the crash, and every attempt to communicate had been met with silence. "Are you hungry?" Marcus asked, softly, unsure of how to approach her. He held a small plate of food in his hand. He'd seen her react badly to food before, but he had to try. Maybe this time, things would be different. The Queen opened her eyes slowly, and Marcus saw the familiar fear flash across her face. She shrank back, her body stiffening, her breath coming faster. She stared at the plate of food as if it were a weapon. She didn't speak, but her eyes told him everything he needed to know. She was terrified. "It's just food," Marcus said gently, setting the plate down beside her on the bed. "You need to eat." But the Queen recoiled even further, turning her head away from the food as if it would harm her. Marcus watched in silence, the weight of her fear pressing down on him. What was it about food that terrified her so much? The Queen's hand shot out, and she grabbed Marcus by the wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong, and for a moment, Marcus thought she might lash out. But she didn't. Instead, she tugged him closer, her eyes locked on his. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. Do not feed me." Marcus was startled. He had never heard her speak before, and the desperation in her voice hit him like a punch to the gut. She was scared, but this was different. It wasn't just fear of the unknown. It was a fear of something specific. He could feel her shaking, and it wasn't just from her injuries anymore. "Why?" Marcus asked, his voice soft. "Why don't you want to eat?" Queen closed her eyes, and for a long moment she didn't answer. The silence between them felt heavy, filled with unspoken words and deep, unsolved mysteries. Finally, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Human hunger. It is not like anything you understand," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Your species ... consumes, but not like others. You ... devour." Marcus blinked, confused. "Devour?" he asked. "What do you mean?" The Queen's eyes darted to the plate of food again, and then back to Marcus. "I have heard the stories," she said softly. "The stories of your hunger, the stories that your kind devours the flesh of other species. I've heard of the power it gives you, the strength, the blood, the fear." Marcus felt a chill run through him as the weight of her words settled over him. The stories, the rumors. He had heard them too, in whispers among the soldiers. There were always rumors about humans being able to consume alien flesh, that doing so would make them stronger, more powerful. But he had never thought much of it. It was just a story, a myth. But now, seeing the Queen's fear, he wasn't so sure. "What power are you talking about?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. "What strength?" The Queen closed her eyes, her expression pained. "We were not always enemies. My people once trusted yours, but then ... they came. The ones who fed, who hunted, who took what they wanted from our kind. The ones who devoured. My people learned to fear your hunger." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. The Queen was speaking of something ancient, something that went far beyond the simple meal she had refused. She was speaking of something deeper, something dark that had haunted her species for centuries. And now it seemed like her fear of humanity had been built on these stories. These legends of devouring and consuming. Marcus's mind raced as he tried to understand. Was she afraid of being eaten? Or was she afraid of what might happen to humanity if they did consume alien flesh? "You're safe here," Marcus said softly, taking her hand in his. "You're not going to be hurt. We're not like that."
"I don't like that."
Queen looked at him, her eyes filled with doubt. She had seen enough of humanity's history to know that words could be deceiving. Her people had been betrayed before, but Marcus wasn't going to give up. He had to make her believe that not. All humans were the monsters she feared, just didn't know how. The days that followed were tense. Marcus found himself torn between his duty to protect the alien Queen and his growing desire to understand the deep fear she carried. The Queen was no longer just a mysterious figure from the stars. She was a living, breathing being, trapped in a world she didn't understand. Her trembling had not stopped, and despite the efforts of Earth's best doctors and scientists, there was still no explanation for her fear. The Queen's condition remained fragile. Her wounds were healing, but she refused to eat anything they offered. The food rations were basic standard military meals, but each time the Queen saw them, she recoiled. Her eyes would widen in panic, and she would shake her head as if refusing something far worse than just food. Marcus had seen her fear of the food grow into something more, a deep terror that seemed to grow with every passing day. Despite her fear, she seemed to trust Marcus more than anyone else. He had been the one to help her when the soldiers brought her in, and over the days, he had been the only one who seemed able to approach her without triggering her panic. He would sit with her, offering quiet words of comfort, even though he didn't fully understand what she had been through. One night, after another failed attempt to feed her, Marcus sat beside the Queen's bed. He looked down at his hands, unsure of what to do next. The silence in the room was heavy, filled with the weight of unspoken words. The Queen lay on the bed, her body still but her eyes alert. She watched him with an intensity that made him feel like she was reading every thought in his mind. "I don't know how to help you," Marcus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what's happening to you." The Queen's eyes softened for a moment, and she let out a sigh. She had heard the soldier's words, and for the first time, she spoke without hesitation. "You cannot understand," she said, her voice quieter than before. "You're kind, you consume, and you do not stop. Marcus frowned, confused by her words. I don't know what you mean. Devour others. We don't take anything from other species like you're saying. The queen closed her eyes and shook her head as if trying to push away the memories that still haunted her. You don't understand. I've seen it. I have witnessed it. Your kind is different. You can consume and take the strength, the essence of other creatures. You become ... stronger. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. The queen was speaking of something ancient, something that he had never heard about before, something that went far beyond the simple idea of eating food. She was talking about something dark, something that made her terrified of humanity. I've never heard of anything like that, Marcus said, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Humans aren't like that. We don't have the power to do what you're describing. The queen's eyes locked onto his. There was no fear in them now, just a deep sadness. You don't understand because you've never seen it. The stories have been passed down in my species for generations. We were warned long ago of a race of beings that could consume the essence of others' beings, that could feed on the strength and power of alien life. They are called hungry ones. Marcus swallowed hard, his mind racing. Could this be true? Could humans have a hidden history? One that even they didn't fully understand? He wanted to believe the queen, but everything he knew about humanity contradicted what she was saying. The queen continued, her voice shaking. I feared this the moment I landed. I thought that you would want to feed on me. I thought that you would take my essence, just as the hungry ones did to my people. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The queen's fear was no longer about food in the traditional sense. It was about something far worse. She wasn't just afraid of being eaten. She feared being consumed in a way that would strip her of everything she was, her strength, her life force. And now Marcus understood that this was the source of her terror. I swear to you, Marcus said, voice steady but filled with emotion, we don't do that. I don't know what happened to your people, but it's not what happens here. We're not like that. We don't take from others like that. The queen looked at him, her expression doubtful. You say that, but how can I trust you?
No.
How can I trust any of you when the stories of the hungry ones have been told for so long? How can I trust that you won't take from me? Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the queen's words. Her fear was rooted in something ancient and terrifying, something that no amount of words could erase. But he had to make her believe that humans were not what she feared. He had to help her understand that Earth wasn't like the world she had left behind. I'm not going to hurt you, Marcus said, his voice firm. Yet I'm not going to let anyone else hurt you either. You're safe here. You have my word. 4. A long moment, the queen didn't speak. She just looked at him, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to find any hint of truth. Finally she spoke, her voice soft and uncertain. Then show me, she said quietly. Show me that I am safe. Show me that you are not like the hungry ones. Marcus nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know how he would prove it, but he knew he had to try. The queen's fear had taken root deep within her, and it wasn't something that could be erased with just words. It would take time. But Marcus was determined to show her the truth. He would not let her fear control her any longer. He stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving the queen's. I will. I promise. As he left the room, Marcus knew that the path ahead would be difficult. He had to find a way to help the queen, to prove that humanity wasn't the monster she believed it to be. For the first time in his life, he realized that some battles weren't fought with weapons. They were fought with trust, understanding, and patience. And Marcus was ready to fight that battle, no matter the cost. Marcus had no idea how he was going to show the alien queen that humanity wasn't what she feared. Her fear of human hunger had grown stronger each day, and every time she saw food, it was as if she saw a monster waiting to consume her. He knew. Her trust in him was fragile, and the only way to help her now was to show her that human hunger was not like the stories of the hungry, ones that had haunted her species for so long. He spent hours thinking about how to prove that humans were different. He knew that the queen's fears were deep, rooted in stories and ancient memories passed down through generations. It wasn't something that could be wiped away with a few kind words. He had to do more. He had to make her believe that Earth wasn't the place of danger she feared. The next day, Marcus decided to try something different. He entered the Queen's room with a fresh plate of food in his hands, just as he had done many times before. But this time, he wasn't offering her the usual military rations. Instead, he had prepared something simple: bread, fruit, and a bowl of water. It wasn't much, but it was something that felt more familiar, more human. The Queen was sitting on her bed, her eyes scanning the room as usual. She still looked fragile, but there was something different in her gaze today. A small spark of curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe she was just tired of being afraid. Marcus approached slowly, setting the plate on a small table beside her. He could see her eyes shift towards it immediately, her body tensing as though she might jump back at any moment. "I made this," Marcus said softly, sitting down on the chair across from her. "It's simple. Just some bread and fruit. Nothing dangerous. You don't have to eat it if you don't want to." The Queen stared at the food for a long moment. Her breath quickened and her hands shook. She was on the edge, torn between fear and curiosity. Marcus could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to trust him, but she was too afraid of what might happen if she did. She couldn't shake the fear that she might be consumed, that she might lose everything if she allowed herself to eat. Marcus took a deep breath. He had to show her that food didn't mean harm. He had to make her understand that humans didn't take from others. It's the way she feared. He picked up a small piece of bread and took a bite. He chewed slowly, making sure she saw every movement. He smiled at her, trying to look as relaxed as possible. "I'm not going to hurt you," Marcus said gently. "I just want you to know that this is safe. Humans don't feed on others. We eat to live, just like you." The Queen's eyes followed his every move, her gaze fixed on the bread in his hand. She was watching him carefully, studying his every action. Marcus could see the fear still lurking in her eyes, but there was a flicker of something else, a hint of hope, maybe. Perhaps she was starting to believe him, or at least, she wanted to. Slowly, after what felt like an eternity, the Queen reached out and picked up a small piece of fruit from the plate. She stared at it, as if unsure of what to do with it. Marcus held his breath, waiting. He knew this moment would be crucial. The Queen hesitated for a long time, her hand trembling as she held the fruit. Finally, with a deep breath, she brought it to her lips and took a small bite. The moment she tasted the fruit, she stopped. Her eyes widened in surprise. The fear that had been so tightly wounded in her body loosened just a little. Marcus smiled gently, watching her. "See, it's just food, nothing more." The Queen didn't respond right away. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to process what had just happened. She had tasted human food and had not been harmed. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax just a little. She looked at Marcus, her expression uncertain but less afraid. "This is strange," the Queen whispered, her voice soft. "I did not expect... this." Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm. "You don't have to be afraid. I know it's hard to believe, but I promise you, humans are not what you think. We don't consume others for power or strength. We don't feed on your essence. We eat to survive, just like you." The Queen looked at him for a long time, her eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. Marcus knew he couldn't hide anything from her. She had seen too much, experienced too much, to be fooled by mere words. He had to show her, through his actions, she was safe. She took another small bite of the fruit, this time with more confidence. Her hand didn't shake as much, and her eyes remained on Marcus, studying him. She wasn't looking at him with the same fear anymore. There was something else there now, something like trust, or at least the beginning of it. "I can see that you believe me," Marcus said softly. "But there's still more to be done. I won't stop until you're sure that you're safe here." The Queen nodded slowly, still chewing the fruit. I will try to believe you. But my people were betrayed. The hungry ones took from us. They fed on us, and they became stronger. I have lived with that fear for so long, it's hard to let go." "I understand," Marcus replied. "But you don't have to live in fear anymore. Not here, not with us. For the first time, the queen looked at the food in front of her without fear. She took another bite, slower this time, and looked up at Marcus. Double quotes. Maybe. Maybe I can learn to trust you, she said softly. Maybe I can learn to trust humans. Marcus nodded, his heart lighter than it had been in days. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a start. She had taken the first step in letting go of her fear. It was up to him to help her take the next ones. The queen's journey wasn't over. She still had many fears to overcome, many doubts to face, but for the first time since her arrival on Earth, she allowed herself to believe that there might be hope, and Marcus was ready to help her find it. It had been several days since the queen took her first bite of human food, and slowly, the walls of fear that had surrounded her seemed to be crumbling. Marcus could see it in the way she looked at him now, the way her eyes were no longer filled with pure terror. She still had moments of doubt, moments where she pulled away, but they were fewer. Each day, she became more comfortable in her new surroundings, and for the first time, Marcus felt hope that she might finally begin to trust him, man the rest of humanity. One evening, as Marcus entered her room with more food, he noticed a change in the queen. She was sitting up on the bed, her posture less rigid, less defensive. It seemed as though she'd begun to settle in, to accept that she was not in immediate danger. Her once distrusting eyes were now studying the room with a quiet curiosity. "Good evening," Raquel said as he approached, offering her the plate of food. "I've got some fruit and bread for you. I hope it's enough." The queen looked at the plate, then at him. She had grown used to the food by now, and there was no longer any visible fear in her eyes when she looked at it. She reached out, but this time, she didn't just pick up a small piece of fruit. She took a whole apple and bit into it. Her movements calm and steady. Marcus watched her closely, his heart lifting. This was progress. Breath. She wasn't just tolerating the food anymore, she was accepting it, eating it, without the slightest hint of fear. He sat down beside her, careful to keep his distance, respecting her space. "Do you feel better now?" Marcus asked, his voice soft but full of concern. "I know it hasn't been easy for you." The queen paused for a moment, chewing slowly. She looked at him, and for the first time since they had met, there was something in her gaze that wasn't fear. It was understanding, maybe even a trace of gratitude. "I am starting to," she said, her voice low. "I was afraid of you, afraid of everything here. But now, see that you are not like the stories. You are not like the hungry ones." Marcus smiled. "No, we're not. Promise you that." There was a long silence between them, a comfortable silence, filled with the sounds of the room and the soft chewing of fruit. Marcus noticed how much more at ease the queen seemed now. Her shoulders were relaxed, her eyes no longer darting nervously around the room. "You're beginning to trust me," Marcus said gently, "and I'm glad. But I know it's still hard for you. You've been carrying this fear for a long time." Queen looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "Yes, it is hard," she said quietly. "But you've shown me that not all humans are the same. You've treated me with kindness, with respect. I can feel it, even if I didn't want to believe it at first. You are different." Marcus nodded, his heart swelling with a sense of accomplishment. "That's what I want you to see. We're not the monsters you feared. We don't take from others. We don't consume. Not like the hungry ones did." The queen took another bite of the apple, her hands steady now, no longer shaking. I am starting to believe you," she said softly. "But it is not just about food, is it?" Marcus frowned, confused by her words. "What do you mean?" She paused, her gaze distant, as if she were thinking of something far away. "It is not just about the hunger. It is about trust. It's about whether I can trust your species to keep their word, my people. We trusted the hungry ones, and they betrayed us. They took from us without asking, without mercy." Marcus's heart sank as he realized the weight of her words. The queen's people had been betrayed by a species that had promised peace, only to turn violent and consume them in the end. The fear she felt was rooted in the deepest kind of loss. It wasn't just fear of hunger, it was the fear of betrayal. "Understand," Marcus said, his voice gentle. "I can't erase the past for you, and I know that. But what I can do is show you that not all humans are like that. I can show you that we don't want to take from you. We just want to live in peace." The queen's eyes met his, and for the first time, she didn't look at him with doubt. She looked at him as though she were seeing him for who he truly was, not just as a soldier, but as a person, someone who had shown her kindness when no one else would. "I believe you," she said softly. "I believe that you are different." Marcus smiled, relief flooding through him. "It's all I can ask for, and I'll keep proving it to you every day." As the queen finished her meal, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had come so far since the first time he had met her, afraid, trembling, and unsure. Now she was beginning to open up, to trust, and that was a victory in itself. It was a bond they had formed, one that went beyond their differences, beyond their species. The queen looked at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not giving up on me, for not treating me like I am just a monster." Marcus's heart warmed at her words. "You're not a monster," he said. "None of us are," for the first time since her arrival. The queen looked at him as though she were truly seeing him not as a soldier, not as a human, but as someone who had shared something with her. A connection that went beyond fear, beyond survival. It was a bond built on trust, and it was something they both needed. "I think I am starting to understand," she said softly, her voice full of quiet wonder. "Maybe we are not so different after all." Marcus nodded, his smile never fading. "Maybe not." And in that moment, as they sat together in the quiet room, Marcus knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The queen had begun to trust him, and that trust had opened a door that could lead to something greater, something both humans and aliens needed: peace. The days continued to pass, and Marcus found himself spending more and more time with the queen. She was changing little by little, and it was something he never expected to see. When she first arrived, she'd been filled with terror. Now, though still cautious, she was beginning to trust not only him, but the people of Earth. It was a slow process, but the walls of fear she had built around herself were starting to fall. She was beginning to see humanity in a new light. One evening, after another quiet meal together, Marcus sat with the queen in her room. The moonlight filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. They didn't speak much, but there was an unspoken bond between them now. The queen had begun to ask him questions, curious about his world, his life, and his species. In turn, Marcus had learned more about her past, her fears, and the pain she had carried for so long. But there was still one question that lingered in the back of his mind, one that he hadn't asked yet, even though he was dying to know the answer. "What happened to your people?" Marcus finally asked, his voice gentle, but filled with concern. "You told me that you feared the hungry ones, but I don't think I fully understand what happened. Why are you so afraid?" The queen's eyes darkened, and for a moment she looked away. She wasn't hiding anything from him. Marcus knew she was just gathering the strength to relive the painful memories. She had told him bits and pieces of her story, but this was the first time she would speak of it in detail. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and then began to speak. "My people were once a peaceful race," she said, her voice soft and distant. "We lived among the stars, sharing knowledge and trade with other species. We didn't think we were better than anyone, but we were respected for our wisdom. Then, one day, we encountered a race we had never met before. They seemed kind at first. They offered us friendship, technology, resources. They told us they wanted to learn from us." Marcus listened intently, his heart heavy with the sadness in her voice. "Everything changed when they asked to share our ... knowledge of energy," she continued. "They wanted to understand how we could tap into the life force of other beings to harness their energy. It was something my people had learned long ago, but it was a secret, something only the most trusted members of our species could ever know. We knew how dangerous it could be, how much power it gave, but these strangers, they were persistent. They begged us to share it." The queen's voice shook slightly as she spoke, and Marcus could see the pain in her eyes. He didn't interrupt, knowing that she needed to tell her story at her own pace. At first, We refused, she said, her gaze hardening. But they didn't take no for an answer. They used force. They attacked us. They destroyed our cities. Our people, ... and they took what they wanted. It consumed us, drained our strength, our life force, and then they left. They left us broken, our people scattered and divided. We didn't know who to trust anymore. Marcus's heart sank as he listened. He could hear the pain in her words, the grief of betrayal and loss. Couldn't imagine what it must have been like for her people, to have trusted someone only to be consumed in the most literal sense. They called themselves the Hungry Ones, and they ... They destroyed us, the queen said, her voice almost a whisper. After that, we were afraid. Afraid of anyone who wanted to come close, afraid of being consumed again. I feared you would be like them, that you would want to feed on me, just as they fed on my people. Marcus's mind raced as he tried to process what she had just shared. The Hungry Ones, a species that consumed the energy of others, that fed on the life force of beings without mercy. It sounded like a nightmare, something out of a dark legend. And yet, it had happened to the queen's people. No wonder she was so terrified. How could she ever trust anyone again after what she had been through? I'm so sorry, Marcus said softly, his voice full of empathy. I had no idea. I can't imagine what your people went through. I promise you humans aren't like that. We don't take from others like the Hungry Ones did. We don't feed on anyone. The queen's eyes softened as she looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, Marcus saw a flicker of hope in her expression. She was still wary, still cautious, but the fear that had once been a constant presence in her gaze was starting to fade. I want to believe you, she said quietly. I want to believe that you're different, but it's so hard. My people trusted once, and they were betrayed. I don't know how to stop being afraid. Marcus sat beside her, his heart aching for her. I can't change what happened to your people, but I can promise you one thing. I'll never hurt you. I'll never let anyone hurt you. You are safe here. The queen looked at him, her gaze steady and searching, as if weighing his words. For a long moment there was silence between them, the weight of her past hanging in the air. But then, slowly, she reached out and placed her hand on his, a gesture of trust that spoke volumes. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me, for showing me that not all humans are the same. Marcus smiled softly, squeezing her hand gently. You're not alone anymore. You have us now. We're not going to let anyone hurt you again. Queen nodded, a small but genuine smile appearing on her face. Maybe... Maybe I can learn to trust you. To trust humanity. Marcus's heart lifted. It was a small step, but it was the beginning of something important. The queen had faced her past, and though it was painful, she was starting to see that not everyone would betray her. Maybe, just maybe, she could learn to believe in a future where trust was possible again. As they sat together in the quiet room, Marcus realized that this was more than just an alliance between species. It was the beginning of a friendship, a bond that had been forged not through power or force, but through understanding and compassion. That, he believed, was stronger than anything else.